Unmanned ground vehicles can perform engineering tasks that are too dangerous for humans. On March the 27th, Putin's army launched another attack on Ukrainian positions near Pokrovsk. However, the enemy was forced to retreat, leaving military equipment on the battlefield. At the same time, the occupiers attempted to break through the barbed wire fence using a tank. Forbes reports. Ukrainian forces were able to quickly patch the gap in the defense thanks to the work of ground robots capable of carrying barbed wire. Putin's army usually advances in small groups and uses civilian vehicles instead of armored vehicles. However, one last attack was an exception, as a T-90M tank was spotted among the attackers. This offensive, like all the previous ones, showed the enemy's weakness. Ukrainian war correspondents noted, the Russian armed forces tank came under fire and was damaged. The Russian armored vehicle tried to break through the barbed wire, damaging it. However, the next morning, there was new barbed wire around the tank. The T-90, apparently damaged, its crew either dead or about to bail out, rolled through the wire before grinding to a halt. Overnight, on Thursday, someone or something repaired the gap in the wire. A Ukrainian aerial drone survey the following morning depicted a fresh stretch of wire around the tank. Special Kherson Cat, who blogs from southern Ukraine, speculated that a Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicle laid the fresh wire, taking over an especially dangerous task that once fell to specially trained sappers. It's possible many Ukrainian brigades deploy radio-controlled UGVs for the riskiest engineering tasks. It makes it much easier to work in all areas, a trooper from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade explained in an official video. The wire-laying robots are simple tracked vehicles with a bed in the back for a thick coil of wire. Carefully driven to the front line by a remote operator, seeing what the bot's own front-facing camera sees, the UGV hooks the end of the coil onto existing wire and then unspools the rest of the coil. If the Russians spot the bot and destroy it, it's no big deal. It's better to fuck up a robot, another 93rd Mechanized Brigade soldier mused.
U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened Iran with bombings and secondary tariffs if Tehran does not sign an agreement with Washington on its nuclear program. If they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. It will be bombing like they've never seen before, Trump said. There is a possibility that if they don't make a deal, I will impose secondary tariffs on them like I did 4 years ago, Trump added. Last week, Iran refused to hold direct talks with Washington. Trump then said that U.S. and Iranian officials were in talks, but did not elaborate. Iran's newly elected president Masoud Pezeshkian responded to Trump's comments in a statement broadcast on state media. While rejecting direct negotiations with Washington, he acknowledged that indirect talks, mediated through Oman, could continue. The supreme leader has also emphasized that indirect negotiations can continue. We do not avoid negotiations. Rather, it is their unfaithfulness that has caused problems for us so far. They must prove that they can establish trust regarding decisions, and I hope this will materialize, Pezeshkian said. Trump previously set Iran a tough framework for a new nuclear deal and threatened consequences if Tehran rejected his proposal. During his first term as president, Trump withdrew the U.S. from the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known as the Iran nuclear deal. The agreement had imposed strict limitations on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Mr. Trump reiterated that his administration remains open to talks but stressed that Iran must demonstrate a commitment to limiting its nuclear program. Hours after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Iran with bombing over nuclear negotiations, the country has responded by readying missiles. According to the state-owned Tehran Times, Iran's armed forces have readied missiles that have the operational capability to hit U.S.-linked positions around the world. A significant number of these launch-ready missiles are located in underground facilities scattered across the country, designed to withstand airstrikes, the report claimed. The Tehran Times has learned that Iran's armed forces have readied missiles with the capability to strike US-related positions, amid ongoing threats of military action from President Donald Trump if Tehran does not agree to a new nuclear agreement on his terms, the report claimed. Donald Trump expressed strong dissatisfaction with Russia's actions towards Ukraine and threatened to impose additional tariffs on Russian oil if the Kremlin does not agree to a ceasefire. He said this in a commentary to the NBC television channel. The host reported that several hours ago, President Trump called her and said that he was furious with the actions of Russian President Putin, and also threatened to impose additional tariffs on Russian oil. If we can't come to an agreement with Russia to stop the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it's Russia's fault, which it may not be, but if I think it's Russia's fault, I will impose secondary tariffs on all oil coming from Russia, Trump said. The US president said that the introduction of 25% tariffs on Russian oil is possible at any moment, and said that he plans to hold a conversation with President Putin this week. The introduction of new tariffs will mean that companies and countries that buy Russian oil will lose the opportunity to do business in the United States. I was very angry, outraged, when Putin began to touch on Zelensky's authority and began to talk about a new leadership in Ukraine, he summed up. Trump stressed that these comments didn't hit the right spot. He also said tariffs against Russia would come into effect within a month if a ceasefire agreement was not reached. He said Putin understood that he was angry, but stressed that they had very good relations, and his anger quickly dissipated if the Russian leader made the right decisions. Earlier, Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov commented during a daily briefing on the possibility of the aggressor country observing the ceasefire and ceasing strikes on energy facilities. According to Russian media, he stated that the Russian Federation reserves the right not to comply with the 30-day ceasefire, justifying it by the fact that Ukraine allegedly regularly violates it.